All right, our last calendar cardigan class. I can't believe it's been a whole year. That's crazy. I mean, a whole half a year. It's crazy. Um, some of you have made an entire adult size, while I have not. I've been doing little pieces, as because sometimes you just have to pick and choose what you're going to work on. But tonight we are going to talk about how to assemble it and how to add the ribbing that goes all the way around. So, um, I think I'll go ahead and go to my camera. All right. When I set this up earlier, it was much brighter in this room. So let's fix that a little. That's better. Okay. So I worked through um, her very short assembly directions here. Um, and added a few things that I thought might be helpful. Having done other knit and crocheted sweater assembly, some things that might be useful to you. And then I'll kind of adapt it to her pattern as we go here. So she says, um, she starts with doing the front and neck ribbing. So she has you starting by doing the shoulder seams here. You can do the front and neck ribbing without having added the sleeves on. Okay, you can do that. And then you can add the sleeves after. I'm going to demonstrate how to do the seaming first and then how to do the ribbing around. But just know that in order to do the ribbing, really all you need to do is to seam the top of your shoulders together, and then you could add the sleeves after. So if you don't want the extra fabric in your lap or whatever, you could hold off on the sleeve part and the side seams until you've done the ribbing. So that's a choice, and it really doesn't matter. But I'm going to show all of the seaming first, and then I'll show how to do the ribbing and some little tips for that. Okay, so her directions say match right and left front to back with wrong sides together and sew shoulder seams. So she's putting, this is my back piece. This is the wrong side of my back piece because I don't have my little crossbars. And here is the one of my fronts right here. And we're going to do the shoulder seams. Now my preference is to do what's called a mattress stitch. You don't have to, but that's the way I'm going to demonstrate. Um, I don't think I would recommend, I don't think crocheting this together is essentially the right way to go, only because we've kind of got some irregular things being joined together. Okay, so um, I think it would be harder to crochet because you're going to end up with maybe some gappy holes. You can absolutely try to do it. I would maybe try to do it with a looser slip stitch join if that's what you want to do, but I'm going to demonstrate how to do the mattress stitch. I find it's a good technique to have, and it gives you a nice invisible seam. It is easy to pull out if part of it doesn't look quite right. You kind of go along at the stitch by stitch and check it as you go. Um, and it's fairly easy to pull it out. Now, so what you need for a mattress stitch is a darning needle. And all a darning needle is I would recommend a blunt tip. Sometimes they're called tapestry needles. Sometimes they have a little bit of a bend on the tip, and that's fine too. But it has a nice big eye right here where you can thread your yarn through. You can, with mattress stitch, you don't have to use the yarn that you crocheted with. You could use another yarn. Um, and if you do, only because the mattress stitch creates an invisible seam, you won't see the yarn if you do it correctly. Um, I wouldn't pick anything that is thicker than the yarn you're doing or anything super thin. Um, I'm going to demonstrate it using this, but on my actual sweater, when I actually do it, I'm going to be using a mercerized cotton yarn only because I'm just going to give this yarn a little tug. It pulls apart pretty easy. And if I'm threading through and it gets a little bit stuck and it breaks, I'm going to be a little bit angry. It's going to be frustrating. So I recommend, let me pull up. I have some right here I can show you. Hold on. Should have had that ready ahead of time. This is a fingering weight mercerized cotton yarn that we carry called Katona. Let me pull one out. Maybe I will do it with this so we can see how invisible a join we can get. It is, it's pretty strong. So giving it, it doesn't want to pull apart, and I'm tugging pretty hard, okay? It's also incredibly smooth, which if depending on the yarn that you used, makes it really easy. If you used a natural wool or something that has a little bit of tooth to it, this will pull very smoothly through your stitches, okay? So I maybe I'll do a little bit of both here. So I'll use this insanely neon green color as well, and we can see how invisible a join I can get. I'm going to start with this one because I already have it threaded, and I'm going to zoom in. So a mattress stitch is a stitch done to join two ends or two sides or ends together. You do it with the right side of the fabric facing you. And she had talked about putting the wrong sides together so that you can see the right side of the fabric. And all I'm going to do here is open it up so that they are laying flat like this. And that is how I like to work mattress stitch. I like to work on a flat surface because what we're going to be doing is working back and forth between the two sides, creating almost a zipper to zip those two sides together. Okay. And if I remember that correctly, we had these markers here. I know this marker showed where the neck shaping began. I'm not going to remove that marker because when we do the ribbing, that's an important marker. But I'm going to take this first one off. I'm just doing the shoulder seams at this point. Um, it is not on mine, it is not very wide, so I don't need to pin anything together. If you were doing larger pieces together, I'm just going to take two random pieces here. If I were putting these two together, I might want to use some stitch markers. Let me zoom out. And this applies to both knitting and crochet. You can use this skill. If I knew I wanted this, let's say I wanted it to end up here, that these were exact sides that needed to match. As I'm stitching together, what I don't want to have happen as I'm working back and forth, is all of a sudden getting to this point and I've got all this fabric left up here. If I have it pinned where I want it, and if you are a sewer, You will understand the phrase easing in your fabric. I would put some pins holding it together along the way so that as I'm matching up stitches, I don't all of a sudden get to the end of it and I'm a little bit off. Okay. Um, but on this little tiny short piece, I don't really need to do that. Okay. Right side, right side. You need a piece of yarn. If you're going to go the whole length, you want a piece of yarn somewhere between 2 to 2.5 lengths that you need to mattress stitch. Okay. Now there's a couple of key things for mattress stitching. And this is going to apply to the shoulder seam, the side seam, the sleeve seam. It applies to all of it. You want to make sure that you are working from, I'm going to call this the right side and the left side, from the right to the left, back and forth, not going 2 stitches on the right and then to the left. You need to be moving back and forth. You need to kind of pick a line. And it's a little bit easier to see in knitting because knitting tends to be a little smoother fabric. But as I'm picking up a place to insert my needle, if I insert my needle here on this side, and then I come across here, and I come back to this side, I don't want to pick it up down here. I want to pick up in the same distance away from my edging, if that makes sense. Now, it is not always 100% possible because we have things like these chain spaces to deal with. Sometimes you have to have a little give and take. So look at your fabric ahead of time and know, like, okay, I've got this chain space. So picking up here probably isn't a good idea because it's going to put me right in the middle of a chain space. So pick a row, pick a line, something along the edge, and try to be consistent. Slightly off, it's not going to matter. Wildly off, it's going to matter. Okay. All right. So I've got my yarn threaded through my darning needle. I'm going to start on this side over here. I've got a chain space right from the beginning. So I'm just going to work right into this edge. I'm going to go pick a spot. I'm going to go into my fabric and come up again. Okay. So I've gone all the way through to the other side and come up again on the right side. I'm never flipping this over going back and forth. I'm always going to have the right side of the fabric facing me. Okay. And I'm going to pull that through, leaving a bit of a tail that you can weave away. Now I'm going to go to this side and I'm going to pick kind of corresponding. Doesn't have to be exact, just has to be close. Because when you're joining things, these both happen to start with chain spaces, but you may be joining pieces that don't have the same stitches. And as a matter of fact, when you do like the sleeve, it will be different. Okay, so I've gone over to this side. I'm going to zoom in even closer. The other thing that makes mattress stitch, the other key thing, other than picking a line and kind of staying in your line, is when I go back over to the other side again, I want to go into the same hole that this yarn is coming out of. It will make for a really smooth. So this yarn is coming out of this hole right here. So that's where I'm going to go back into. And then I'm going to come up another stitch over. So I've got some fabric under there. I am not going to pull it tight. I'm going to leave it loose. And now I'm going to go back over to this side and I want to go into the same hole that this yarn is coming out of. Go into that hole. And I'm using the tip of the needle. I'm kind of pulling up until I find it feels like it's kind of locked in there. And I want to come up roughly the same distance that I did on this side because I want these two to kind of mesh up together like this. Again, I'm not going to pull tight. I'm leaving, they almost look like laces in between. And if I'm doing a bigger piece, I like to do about an inch or an inch and a half before I start to pull it. So in this particular case, I can get all the way across my little piece here. So going back, finding the hole that my yarn came out of on this side, going back in, using the tip of my needle, like I feel like that's too far. So I'm going to just pull it up, and I don't want to split my yarn because that's really hard to get the needle back in there when you come back across. Okay, back to this side. That's good. Go back where this yarn came out. And now I'm coming to the end here. I just want to capture this end piece of yarn there. Did I get it? Yeah. And let's go back to this side. Do the same thing. Okay. So now I've got these laces going. I'm going to hold my tail. I'm going to zoom out just a little here so you can see that happen. Okay. I'm going to hold the tail still. And then I'm going to pull and draw these two sides together. And if I've done it correctly, if I've gone into the hole that it came out of each side, it should pull really smoothly. I need an extra hand here. So I'm holding my tail. I'm just going to hold these pieces, give it a little tug. And it should pull so smoothly that it will pull my tail through. And you can see that it is pulling the tail through. Okay. So I don't want to pull it so that it gathers, okay? I want that yarn to pull smoothly through there without scrunching up my stitches, okay? So I just kind of spread it back out. And what it has done is on the opposite side, it has pulled a little bit of a seam, but from the right side, or the public side of your fabric, there is no seam. Okay. Now, because we've got, and I did this fairly large so that it was easier to see. If this bothers you, if your chain space where if it bothers you there, you could certainly pick up, here and here, and it would draw that chain space together a little bit. But my chain spaces are rather large. Um, on here. So it just kind of goes with the whole thing. Okay. If you didn't like how it looked, or if you were doing a piece, and I'm going to do it in that bright green in just a second, you could, like, oh, I don't like the way it looks right there. You could start to pull it apart a little, and you could loosen it back up and take out the part you don't like and then redo it. Okay. But it should pull smoothly through. Okay. And then you can adjust it so that it gathers. Now, like I said, I do this for about an inch or an inch and a half, and then I pull it because what you don't want to do is do all those laces back and forth for a long stretch and start to pull it and realize you made a mistake way back here where it won't pull, and then you've got to take it all out again. So just doing an inch, inch and a half at a time, give it a snug, and it will also help you make sure you're on track for keeping that you don't have to ease anything in. This obviously was a really small piece, but when you're doing your side seams for your sweater, which we'll talk about here in a second, when we're doing the side seams, I would pin here at the bottom and at the top of my ribbing because I want that line of ribbing to be even all the way across, okay? And you'll be going up all the way up to the underarm here. So I would do this and then I would pull, and then I would do another inch or so and then I would pull, and then another inch or so and then I would pull, okay? And that way you know that it's secure as you go. All right, so I have started with, and then I would do the other shoulder seam like this. Um, the next part, let's thread our neon green here. And because this has a lot of holes in it, or it's an open, uh, kind of an open look to this fabric, you might be able to see some of this green, but it'll give you an idea of how the thread works. The next thing, as far as seaming, you could go ahead and do your shoulders and then do your ribbing. But for seaming, you can either choose to attach your shoulder to the sleeve, or you could start your side seam. Personally, I like to do this part next because it's another piece that I can lay flat. Okay. So here's my front, here's my back, here's my sleeve. I'm going to find the center of my sleeve, put a stitch marker there, and I want to pin it to the seam I just made, which is the center of my front and my back. Now, again, I have a very small sleeve here, but then I would pin going out from here, okay? What you don't want to do is pin all the way to the end, and I'll explain why in just a few minutes. But I would start in the center and pin as you go, leaving the last, I would say, half inch to 3/4 of an inch unseamed. Okay, so there's no need to pin it together. We need to leave it unseamed. So when I'm doing a shoulder seam, I like to seam from here to here. So the center to the edge and from this center to the edge. And you can do that all with one piece of yarn by leaving a long tail. So I can work from here to here, and then I can turn it around, put the tail on my needle and work from here to here. And then it's one continuous piece. But the reason I like to work from the center out is no matter what you're making, you're always going to have to do a little finagling in the underarm. Let me face this way. There's always going to be something that you have to work in. Because you've got, if I can turn it this way, you're going to do the same thing with your side seam. I would start down here and work up, not going all the way up because we've got our sleeve here. Any finagling or I don't know why I keep using that word. Any fudging you need to do should happen in the armpit because nobody sees that. And there always is going to be a little bit of adjusting that has to be done. And you want that to happen in the underarm. Okay. So if I work here to here, leaving this open, and here to here, leaving that open, and then do my side seam, getting closer to here, and then seam the underside of my sleeve here to here, leaving it open, what you'll end up with is this little kind of diamond shape of all four seams coming together. And I don't care how good you are, there's always some finagling or fudging that has to be done. And it's much easier to work it in the underarm. So what you'll do is you're going to have a tail from each end, from each of those four seams, from this side of the sleeve, from this side of the sleeve, from underneath the sleeve, and the side seam. So all four of those pieces will be coming together. And then you can visually decide what the best way to do it is. Like, oh, I have a little bit too much on this side. So I'll seam up a little bit more here and then a little bit more here, and eventually it will all gather into the center. So any little adjusting you have to do will be in the armpit. The other thing you want to make sure you do before you seam it up, before you close up that armpit is, got this all turned around now. You get the sleeve partially seamed on, which I'm about to do, is you want to be able to stick your arm in there and make sure that that you've got enough room in that arm. There is nothing more uncomfortable than a tight through the underarm stitch. So if you've left yourself a gap, if you go all the way up to the top where you think it's all going to meet, it might be too tight. It might be fine, but it might be too tight. If it is too tight, you can take it back and you can do a little magic kind of weaving. Maybe you want to leave the body open a little bit more and seam this part up a little bit more. You'll be able to feel where you need the room. Do I need it more on my body or body part here, or do I need more in my underneath my arm? And you can bring one seam up a little closer to the armpit than the other side. Okay. If you've got any questions or trouble with that, please reach out. I'm happy to walk through that with you. If you've got a special fit that needs to be adjusted. Um, but hopefully you can make it work by working towards the underarm. Okay. All right. So let's see how this does here. So anytime I'm seaming a sweater, this is the order I do. Shoulder seams, then I do my sleeve, and then I do the underarm, and then I do the side seams with everything meeting up in the underarm. Okay, so again, I've got this. Yeah, this yarn's definitely going to show just because I've got the chain space right there. I'm going to leave a long tail so I can use it to go the other direction. And I'm going to pick my line over here. Go in the space I came out of. In the space I came out of. You can also pick, even if you don't use the yarn that you crocheted with, you could find a similar color in a very smooth yarn. Your yarn might work just fine. And there are plenty of sweaters I've done where I've just used the yarn that I've knit or crocheted with. But you might find it easier depending on your yarn to use something like this. Don't use a thread, it's not strong enough. And it can cut, if it's too thin like that, it can cut through the yarn. And you don't want that. So, okay, I've done a little bit there. Oh, let me zoom back in, sorry. All right, I'm gonna hold my tail and I'm gonna give this a little snug. And it did pull. If I keep pulling, it does pull on my tail, so I know I've got it in there. And I'll be dipped. It is pretty invisible. Let me. So in theory, the mattress stitch really does make an invisible seam. Now I should be able to see it on the wrong side a little bit. That's not uncommon, but that's pretty good. Now, here's the other part. When you're doing a long piece like this, and I've done my little bit, and then I'm going to continue going on. Here's what you can't see the hole you came out of on this side. So you will always need to loosen up just the last stitch. If everything else is fine, just loosen up that last stitch so that you can go back and go into the hole that you came out of and continue on. Now, they don't have to be super, super close together, these stitches, but you also don't want them to be super far apart. Um, like I wouldn't go all the way down to here. I feel like that's too far, but it also doesn't need to be, you know, a yarn's length away. You just be consistent on both sides and you'll find your way. All right, so let's go back over here. Going in there. And like I said, I'm going to leave the underarm open. So let's do one more over here. Oh, you know what? That one went into the chain space, not a stitch. That's not a good idea. So let's redo that one because that will definitely just wrap over the yarn and you'll for sure see that. Okay. But that was pretty easy to take out. And by doing it just a little bit at a time, uh, you can make those adjustments. I'm not going to lie, seaming it together is not a short process. You're going to be so excited you have all your pieces done, and then you're going to feel like you have to do a whole sweater over again in putting it together. But don't rush it. We spent too long putting this together. All right, we'll do one more over here and we'll give it a snug. So except for my really chainy space down here, it actually is not too bad as far as an invisible seam goes. All right, so I would go leaving that end. I don't want to do that. Now I'm going to turn it around. I'm going to take my tail and I'm going to work my way this way. So this will all be done with um, one piece. I can take this marker out now, but I know that my center of my sleeve is at the center of my shoulder seam. If I start here and work towards, it's really easy for that to be off. Okay. Or you're working on easing it in. And like I said, we want to end up with our loose pieces at the underarm on both sides. Okay, so again, I've got to loosen up because I don't know where the hole is. And there it is. Let's come up there. On our website, Around the Table Yarns website, I know I'm trying to get this. I have also done a video tutorial on just mattress stitch in general, mostly focusing on knitting. Um, so if you need any more guidance, I know a lot of our customers have referred back to that. And you will see that was filmed during the pandemic, when we really didn't know what we were doing with video. So it's pretty entertaining. I feel like I'm sitting in a closet with like a flashlight or something, filming something. Um, but the steps are there. All right. Um, all your tails. That's another, while I'm doing this, we can talk about weaving away your ends. Personally, I like to weave away my ends after I have finished and I have blocked or washed my garment. My feeling is, and this is by no means the only way to do it. Um, you want to weave away your ends, and I like to do at least 2 to 2.5, 3 inches worth of yarn. Some people will just tie a knot and cut it. I have found that knots can come undone, and then you have a very short end and with which you have to work with. So if you want to weave away your ends and then tie a knot, that would be a compromise. Um, but I have also found that after I've washed or blocked, and the fabric loosens and it relaxes and it settles, that my yarn ends will pop out. So then I've got to finish tucking them away again. So I just wait until all of that's done and then weave away my ends. Some people like to do it as they go. You could weave most of it away and not trim the ends and trim them after you block it. That would be another way to go. Okay, I've gone a fairly good distance. Let's see how it works. It should pull smoothly. It does pull pretty smooth. So now I'm just going to hold on to both sides here. And there we go. Okay. So let's zoom back out here a little. And again, mattress stitch done. You had the right side of the fabric facing you the whole time. Okay, so now I've got the top of my sleeve done across the shoulder. Um, and then it's up to you. You can either work from the cuff up towards the underarm or the side seam up towards the underarm. It doesn't matter which one. But I'm not trimming my ends here because I'm gonna eat. I still have more to do once I get everything to the underarm. Let me push these tails out of the way. So what you're going to end up with is, as I seam, this kind of a hole here, okay? And then that's where you're going to start to sew a little bit from this side, sew a little bit from this side, from this side, from this side, until you've all met in the middle. But when you've got this and this kind of big hole in the underarm is when I want you to try it on and make sure that you've got plenty of room. If it already feels a little snug or a little tight, maybe it needs to come down a little bit on the body. Okay, maybe this can come down a little bit further on the body instead of creeping in this way. So leave that hole in the middle, try it on, and make sure it's comfortable at that point. All right. So that's my interpretation of how to seam it together. And like I said, this is my preferred method. There are other ways to seam. Um, Another darning needle way. Oh, and this one you can actually you can kind of see the seam that gets pulled. Let me turn it sideways. So it does pull a bit of a seam to the wrong side, but that's where you want it. And from the right side, it's very smooth. There's no visible bump, no visible seam. And as long as you haven't kind of gathered or puckered your fabric, it's very flexible. Okay, it should just move with your fabric. You could, from the wrong side of your fabric, do what's called a whip stitch. And I'm just going to take, so a whip stitch is done with the wrong side facing you, and you take two ends, kind of fold them together so you have a double thickness, and you go over both sides. This you want to keep fairly close together. And this you would need to do in the same yarn or a very close color because when I look from the right side, you definitely will see your stitching. But if it's in the same yarn, there's nothing wrong with that kind of seam. It's not invisible, but if you are using the same yarn, you would not see that. So it depends on your design. Okay. This has got a lot of texture and is pretty busy, pretty easy to hide something like a whip stitch, and it goes a lot faster. Um, so it's just make sure that those stitches are fairly close together. You don't want to leave wide gaps because it's not, you need the structure. You need the structure of the seam. So the closer it is together, the more it's pushed together, the more structure it will have, and the more your sweater's going to hold up. Okay, so a whip stitch would be another alternative. But I have to say, because she did not give a preferred method in this pattern, I prefer the mattress stitch, and I think it works well for this project. Okay. So that's seaming. So then you have it all seamed together. Or if you want to do the just the fronts to the backs, you can do that and we'll do the ribbing here. All right. Now, when you're doing, um, you get to see I made a little paper doll here of my sweater because there were some things I wanted to point out. So you could just have the shoulder seams done in order to do the neck and front ribbing, or you could have your sleeves put on as well. Okay, so my little sleeves. You are going to you're going to be working with the right side facing you, and you're going to be working around the right front, across the back neck, and down across the left front. And then you will be working back and forth that way to do your ribbing. Okay. So you're not flipping it. I'm sorry, you are flipping it over front and back, just like we did our pieces. But this is your path back and forth this way. Okay. Um, she does say in here that, and I have a little drawing, having an even a particular number of stitches is not important as we do this, but you do need to have an even number of stitches, okay? So you are going to start right down here, the bottom of the right front, all right? And we are going to be picking up and crocheting. I believe hold on, I'm looking. I believe it's a half double. Right side facing, it is half double. So we're going to be doing half double, working all the way up. And remember, I told you that that marker that we had left for the neck shaping, that you needed to leave that marker in. Right here at this marker. And now what I'm doing is I'm going back to her directions for the front and neck rib. She does say exact stitch count in this next row does not matter as long as they're an even number of total stitches and stitches are worked evenly around, which means that let's say that I'm going to throw out a random number, 100 stitches from here to here. I don't want 75 of them here and 25 here, okay? I want it to be evenly dispersed all the way around is what she means by that, okay? Because it will hang funny if that is not the case. So she starts here, between here and the top of the ribbing. Um, I believe it is, let's see, we're going to start with the chain two, and I'm gonna demonstrate on the side here so you can see in a second. Chain two, it counts as a half double crochet throughout this part. So our chain two counts, half double in the same stitch, half double in the next 12 row ends of your ribbing. So we made our ribbing, going back and forth this way, and we have what's called row ends that look like the ends of our rows, where we made our chains when we turned. So between here and here, she wants you to grab yarn, start with a slip knot. Okay, so I'm starting with the right side facing. I'm going to go right into the corner. I'm going to slip stitch to join. And I'm going to chain two. Let's try that again. Slip stitch to join all the way through. Here we go, chain two. That counts as a half double. And I'm going to do a half double in the same in the same place. Okay. So we don't have actual stitches we're going into. We are going in, this is kind of no man's land here. We have the ends of our rows we're going into here. So obviously my piece is not the full size of ribbing. I am not going to fit 12 stitches, but knowing let's assume that this is the full piece and we wanted to get 12 stitches between the beginning of this ribbing and the end of this ribbing. Anytime I have to get a certain number when this is called picking up stitches. It works for both knitting and crochet. If I need to get 12 between here and here, okay, put my marker right there. I know that halfway across, and I'm just going to eyeball it because it doesn't have to be exact. It just needs to be close. Halfway across, I should have between here and here, I should have 6. And between here and here, I should have 6. Okay. So that's and if with your wider ribbing, you can break it down even further than that. I could put a marker halfway in between, knowing between this one and halfway I need 3. Here and here I need 3. And that's how you can evenly distribute your stitches. What you don't want to have happen is if I need 12 between here and here, is I get this far and I've got this much room left and I've only got 6 stitches because then I got to pull out and I got to figure it out again. By kind of mapping it out with stitch markers, I can figure it out by the time I get the first 3 in that I'm on track. I'm like, oh, that's too close. I got to back out. I don't have to do the whole section to know that it's not going to work out. Okay. So obviously, I'm not going to fit 12 in here, but let's say I needed to fit 6 between here and here. Okay. I've done 1. I'm sorry, I've done 2 because my chain 2 counts as a half double, and I believe that's correct. Hold on. Oh, in the next 12 row ends. So I need to have, so these two don't count. I have to go into the next 12 row ends. So let's say I need to have 6 from where I'm here to here. All right. So I need to get 3 before this next marker. So I'll put 1 here. And I am absolutely 100% eyeballing this. This is where you have to, there is absolutely no sorry, no, I can't tell you what stitch to put it in because your row ends are going to look a little different than mine. And sometimes it's not going to make sense. But like we did the seaming, be consistent on how far away from the end you insert your hook. Don't insert way up here and then way down here in the next one. Pick it up in a consistent line going down. All right, so I did 1. I'll put the next one. And sometimes it's just where will the hook fit? You want to try to come underneath, if you can, underneath more than one strand. If it's not possible, um, it's okay. But when you go underneath one strand, you get that right there. You get a hole because it pulls that one strand away. So let me try that one again. And let me see if I can catch 2 strands of yarn so that you can see the difference. Here we go. So now it's right in line. All right, so now my third one is going to be right up here on my stitch marker, and it might be easier to take the stitch marker out. But now I know, because I put those stitch markers in, I know how far apart they need to be spaced, knowing how many I need to get. And that will, oop, that was only one strand. Let's try again. Like I said, it doesn't have to be exact. Here's where I'm wishing I had made my chains a little bit looser. All right, so that's three. Here's some parts of your row ends are going to be easier than others. Four. And it will look a little sloppy because we are, um, it's like having a raw edge and doing that first row of single crochet around. It always looks better when there's a little something on top of it. And it will look better once we get the ribbing going. Okay. So now I've got, now when I get all six in there, they actually look pretty good. But when I'm looking at it one by one, it didn't look so good. So now I know that kind of gives me a little gauge as to how far apart each of these stitches needs to be. Um, in picking up the row ends. Okay. She does give us a little guidance once we get onto our stitch pattern fabric out of the ribbing. She says two half doubles in each row end of the front. So let's look at what our rows were going up once we got past the ribbing. Our rows, we remember we started with chain fours. And we ended up, when we came back across, we put a stitch in the top of the third chain. So we have one, two, three chains are our row ends here. She wants you to put two half doubles in each row end. Now, you don't want to put less, but you might want to put more. Here, and here's why. I'm going to do a few. So I'm putting two half doubles, and I'm just going underneath. I'm not going into the fabric, although you could. I I don't think it will make that much of a difference because you've got the big chain space right there. Okay. The ribbing is going to stay nice and tight because that is a different fabric. This fabric's going to be a little different. If you were to do fewer than two in each one, you would your when you make your ribbing, sorry, let me get this more yarn pulled out. Um, it will not lay well across the body. It will pull too tight. If you have too many stitches, it will almost create a ruffle. So I will use her guidance, um, working my way up here. I'm going to stop and just kind of get a sense. Does it lay flat? And it does. Okay. If it was doing some of this action, then that would mean I would have too many stitches. And here's how you can adjust that. If I felt like it was starting to ruffle because it was too much, because that ruffle is just going to get carried out in the ribbing and it's not going to be flattering. So if you need to adjust, instead of putting two in every row end, you could put two in the first, one in the next, two in the next, one in the next, if you felt like you needed to get rid of that many stitches. Or you could put two in this one, two in this one in this one, two in this one, two in this one in this one. And by working across a small section like this ahead of time and checking that you're not getting that ruffly thing, um, you can make your adjustment and then carry on with that same pattern all the way around. And then your stitches will be evenly distributed. If it was really doing this kind of business, telling me, oh, by making these like maybe my stitches are really tight, you could maybe put three in this one, two in this one, two in this one, three in this one. You can, it doesn't have to be in every row end. You could spread them out a little bit if you needed to. If you felt like it was pulling too tight this way, that means you don't have enough stitches. If it's pulling in and ruffling, you have too many. If it's laying flat, and this is by her suggestion, then you are probably okay. Okay? Now, she has you working, and here's where I'm going to go back to my little drawing, working all the way up until you get to that marker and where the front joins the back neck shaping. And we have a little marker there. If you don't have the marker there, it's that spot. Okay. What she wants you to do there is to kind of close that gap is you are going to half double crochet two together. And I'm going to just magically pull my yarn here. Oh, I'm almost there. Let me just work up to that. Let's see what she means. One, two. So it'll start to look a little different when you're working across the shaping you did on the front. So your row ends may not always be consistent looking, but the stitches you're putting into them are what's going to make it consistent so that you can add the ribbing to this. All right, so I'm getting up here to the top where I'm in there. Let's put two in here. All right. So what she wants you to do when you get to the top of the neck shaping is to half double crochet two together over the double crochet and the slip stitch at the start of the back neck shaping. So if you remember when we did the back, let's find our back neck shaping here. There's my shoulder seam. We did well, my little thing came out there a little bit. We did a slip stitch right here. So what she wants you to do is to kind of bridge that gap is let's do let's see, there's the slip stitch right there. So put one, two, okay, so I'm going to do part of a half double and into that slip stitch, yarn over and pull through all of them. And what that will do is it makes a nice tighter curvy edge. Because remember we had it's going to help it move down into that shaping that we made because it's even on this little thing too. It has a little bit of a dip in the back. And it's this point right here where we want to make sure that that is nice and smooth right there. Okay. Now, going back this direction, then you'll work across the back neck. Let's see. One half double in each stitch along the back neck because now we are not going into row ends, we are going into stitches. Coming up the front, we were going into row ends across the back part, we're going into stitches. So 1/2 double in each stitch, which is easy. All the way across. She does not have you doing a um, half double together on this side. And I think it's because of the way the stitches are angled. She just has us doing into the slip stitch. You are going to put a half double in the slip stitch and then 1/2 double in the double. Okay, so she wants you to go into the slip stitch, but not do a two together. And at this point, you can take that marker out. Into the slip stitch, into the double, and then work your way across. And I don't have my other front connected, but let's zoom out. What you'll do is then you would work down the front piece on this side the same way, okay? And if your pieces were the same size, you should have the same number of stitches coming down. What you want to have happen though is an even number all the way around, okay? So because we're doing the ribbing, it does need to be an even number. So what I would do is I would work here and all the way down. And before I got to the ribbing, because I know needs to be 12, is I would do a quick count. And let's make sure we're going to end up with an even number. If you need to add an extra stitch or skip a stitch, just do that, just to make sure it's an even number. Because then you're going to work in um, row 2, front post and back post, and because it's a pair, it has to be an even number. Okay. So once you get all the way down to here, let's see, you'll put two once you work all the way down. Remember, we started with a chain two and a half double in the same stitch. When you come down the other side, you'll put two half doubles in the last stitch. So it'll be matching. You'll have the same number. And then you're going to work your way back up with front post, back post. So I'm just going to start where I was in the back here because that's where my yarn is attached. So you're going to start with a chain two. And if you remember, when we first started our ribbing and you had to go into that half double row, it's not so fun. So, or at least I didn't find it fun. So make sure you're hitting every stitch. Front post double, back post double, all the way around. Front post double, back post double. I'm just going to work across these back stitches. Yeah, so make sure you're not skipping any. And you are going to repeat this row, front post, back post. Basically another 8 times or until the rib measures. She's got 7.5 centimeters. You could reduce it if you wanted to, or you could add to it if you wanted to. Here's what I will say though, because it is going to fold over. I would do her recommended and I would try it on. I would see how it lays. Um, if when you get all of that done, you've got your ribbing coming out, if you feel like you want a little bit more in the front, but you don't want so much in the back underneath your neck, okay? What you could do is if it feels comfortable wearing it across the back of your neck, but you want it to come in a little, your ribbing to come in a little bit more, Continue on as usual. And once you get up to, let's say, closer to the shoulder, pick a spot, even on both sides, and put a marker. Instead of front post doubles, change those to front post half doubles because they won't be as tall and it won't add extra bulk at the back of your neck. Now, again, that's only if you want to add more ribbing in the front, in the fronts coming in, but don't want to add the same amount of extra ribbing across the back. You could just make those ribbing stitches shorter and you won't add the extra bulk. So let's say you do, if she says to do an 8 additional rows, I would say do 4 rows first and try it on. See how that feels across the back of the neck because you could switch to shorter ribbing across the back of the neck really anytime you wanted to, if that was something you didn't want to have happen, if you didn't want it too high. That I have long hair, it gets caught up underneath my hair. If you've got short hair or a longer neck, it might be fine. But personally, I hate all that extra underneath my neck, unless it's something that's supposed to roll. And this one is not necessarily supposed to roll, it's supposed to lay flat. So that's just a little adjustment you can make. Instead of doing front post doubles, make them front post half doubles across the back. They won't be as tall and you won't add the extra um, width up across the back of the neck. Yours might be fine, but it's a suggestion and you could do that anytime. It won't be noticeable. It's the ribbing, it's the front post, back post that is important. Um, if they're a little shorter, it will just look like part of the design. Just make sure you start it in the same place on each side so that it's even across. And then you have a finished sweater. And it's amazing. And all we have to do is actually now finish our sweater so we can go on and do this part. Amy, do you have any questions?
No, I'm really grateful for the videos because I
Good.
know when I catch up and get to these, I will be going back.
That absolutely. And if you've got anytime you're watching these videos, it could be years later. God willing, we're still here. Give us a call, reach out to us. And actually, it's easier via email. If you email us within the subject line, calendar cardigan question, then it gets directed to the right person and we can respond to it. And we're always happy to pop on Zoom if you're not local and you can't come in. We're always happy to do that if that would be, and we can demonstrate with the camera if there's something we can help you with. So
Thank you.
we want finished sweaters. And that's all I got.
That's a lot. That's awesome.
It was a lot. Yeah. All right, I'm going to end this recording. Hold on here.